You're welcome back. This is Joy News Desk with me, Benis Abubedu. Let's talk about changing minds. Too much bad news these days. Talk of suicide, student clashes leading to the stabbing of innocent individuals, gang rape leaving a 14-year-old girl in life-threatening complications, a school building collapsing despite months, weeks and days of warning, and a tree falling on reveling students and killing as many as 19 and injuring 11. What more can be worrying to a nation than this after many lives are lost needlessly to predictable and preventable situations? Have we lost it as a nation? And what can be done? Well, there's a school of thought that suggests our problems as a nation stems from the way and manner we think and do things. In other words, if we need to see a different Ghana, then there must be a change in mindset and attitude. But how? Well, I'm joined in studio by the Chief Executive of Changing Minds Ghana Limited, Mr. Alexander Kwesi Kufuor, to share some ideas with us. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
First of all, let's talk about this. Now, you're of the view that a lot of the things we see in this country, a lot of the disasters that are reported in the news, can't be avoided by simply changing the way we think and act. How's that?
Yeah, definitely. I believe that the major problems that confront Ghana are attitudinal, negative mindsets, negative attitudes, and negative values. And I'm confident that a significant paradigm shift of our thinking, I mean, this is not common to Ghana. Many nations in the developed world have faced enormous and gargantuan challenges. And I think the root of it is our mindsets. And I believe that, for instance, if you see the evidence of our thinking, corruption, nepotism, tribalism, sycophancy, all these stem from our minds. And a significant change in that, of course, we do not expect that this is going to be overnight or it's going to be, in a week. But once the process is begun, then we expect that in a generation we'll see a new Ghana.
All right, and I'm just curious about this. You talk about nepotism and all these things that are sometimes very deeply rooted, you know, in people. So how do you expect this paradigm shift to occur? I know you've mentioned that it won't happen overnight, but how?
The how is that, of course, it is said that you cannot teach an old person new tricks. We want to focus on the younger ones, from primary schools, nursery schools, junior high school, and so on. The younger generation, they have a formative mind, and they are receptive to new ideas. So we believe that if we inculcate values of selflessness, of patriotism, values that say, well, my brother is my keeper. I've been in Ghana 2 weeks, and I think that egocentrism and selfishness is almost a god. People are obsessed with themselves, and they couldn't care a hoot. And I see that there's also a breakdown of our extended family system, which in the past used to be kind of communocratic and brought people together. I'm a writer, and I observe behind what I see. And what I see in Ghana is not good, And as you rightly pointed out, there's this systemic and it's endemic.
So, Mr. Kufuor, let's focus on the how. Let's talk about how we're going to do this. Obviously, get them while they're young, talk to them about being their neighbor's keeper and all that. But how are we going to do that? For example, across this country, a lot of children all over the country. How? What's the plan?
Well, the plan is a strategic plan. The plan is we intend to kind of recruit people and induct them into the thinking mode that we're talking about. And for a start, you just cannot get anybody and say, well, we want to, make a difference in the lives of the people. You're going to do some induction program so that they align their thinking to yours. And I have come across quite a number of people who also want a change. So already there are people there who want our society to change. It's not like you're going to get a whole army of people who have no clue. I've interacted with people who can make things happen. And there are other organizations on the ground. I think changing minds, we don't believe that we singularly can do this. There are other other NGOs on the ground, like Occupy Ghana and others, that we need to engage with. And I believe that this fundamental change can only occur when we work in partnership with other organizations. When we seek also to influence government, our organization is not political. We are not partisan. We are not religious, and we are not tribal. And even though I'm a political scientist, I've deliberately decided that I'm not going to be partisan. I just want to be neutral, so that if we stress the national interest of Ghana rather than the self-interest. I mean, what has gone on in Ghana is that even the political parties apply self-interested principles. And so you elect a party, and it's not the national interest, it's the party interest.
All right, so I mean, before we drift into that side of the conversation, so are we going to see, for example, Changing Minds Ghana have branches or chapters in schools? Are you going to be visiting schools?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kind of practical things I'm asking
about. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have Changing Minds clubs. Okay. In all schools. I mean, obviously, we're going to have pilots in regional centers, and then and collaborate with the Ministry of Education and get some sort of curriculum. I understand that in the past there used to be a curriculum for civic education, which is no longer there. We can also collaborate with the National Council of Civic Education. My perception and observation of the NCCE is that it comes to life only at election times. And so as we collaborate and we have chapters in the regions, districts, and villages, then I believe that you can inculcate values which are positive. And then the paradigm shift will begin to take place.
So how long have you been in Ghana?
You mean personally?
No, as an organization, Changing Minds.
We actually, we did a major workshop last year. The organization has been 2 years in formation, and it was about 3 years of agonizing discussions. You know, in the diaspora, believe it or not, there are some of us who, my umbilical cord is very much located somewhere in Caria. So even though I've lived over there a long time, I'm very much a Ghanaian. And the Changing Minds organization is not an imperial organization. It's not a colonial organization. I believe that, you know, we have the ability and the capability as Ghanaians to make a difference in our society.
Okay, so let's talk about the kinds of works that you have done, and in terms of cases of changing attitudes in people. Can you share any examples so far?
Well, I'll say to you that, I mean, for instance, in Britain, we are in the process of establishing a mentoring program because we live there. There are quite a number of challenges for black.
So everybody who is part of Changing Minds Ghana lives in Britain?
No. It's international. We're going to spread the news to all the countries. You know, I've already been to Amsterdam. I'm planning to go to the United States. And of course, we're not seeking to get a whole army of people. Of course, you cannot do that.
Okay, let me get this clarification. Are you going to these various countries to set up, for example, Changing Minds USA, or you're looking for Ghanaians who are living in those various countries to be a part of Changing Minds Ghana?
Yeah, Ghanaians, and not only Ghanaians, but there are a number of people who are associated with Ghana.
Okay. So you're not setting up, for example, Changing Minds USA or Changing Minds Canada?
No. Okay. No. It's kind of an amoebic organization, if you like. We want a cellular structure where we can relate with the international places like Amsterdam, like Canada, America. Already have people who are trying to galvanize. So it's mobilizing Ghanaians in the diaspora, not to bring them physically back to Ghana, but to identify with the problems of Ghana and the solutions, because the fact is that many of us have dissociated ourselves from our country. We think we live in the developed world, we are okay materially, but I say to people, you may be okay, but 90% of our relatives live in Ghana. So if Ghana works, it benefits all of us. And so that's the approach.
Mr. Kufuor, someone may argue with your strong view that thinking is not the only problem we have in Ghana. For example, someone will argue, yes, we think up the solutions, but we need money. We need money to make them effective, to make them work. How would you respond to such a
Well,
person?
basically, yes, we need money. I mean, this is a resource organization. It's not only a question of changing minds. The changing minds will bring positivity to the country. But in terms of money, you are aware that there's been corruption for a decade. Okay, a lot of the politicians come into power, and they are not. I mean, I've argued in my writings. I write. I'm a feature columnist for the Ghanaian Times. I've written for 12 years, and I produced a book last year, Critical Reflections on Ghana's National Development. And my strong argument is that our political system, which is democratic, is a ballot box democracy. That's what I think. And so you
and what do you mean by a ballot box democracy?
Ballot box democracy, a democracy simply means that after we've cast our vote and elected our representatives in a representative democratic structure, our MPs and our representatives then represent their interests instead of interests of the population. And therefore you see a very thin-skinned man, he comes into power, and after 4 years he is pregnant with you know, all the beers and all the things. So whose interest is he representing? I've argued this passionately, that we need a structure where our elected representatives are directly responsible to the constituents. And we have to have a system where we require constitutionally these representatives to have surgeries with their constituencies at least every month, to come up with plans for development and so on, so that they are touching the people. When they are elected, how many times do they go to their constituencies? What
well,
do
they have to work from here.
Sorry?
They have to be in parliament.
You've got to be in parliament, but you've got to be at your constituency to identify with the needs of a constituency. So I believe that, again, there should be a fundamental shift in the thinking of our political elite. Because I believe, I mean, when I've come to Ghana, I see that there's hopelessness, restlessness, despair. You drive on the street, young people, 10 years and 15, who seriously should be in the classroom, but they are struggling to make a living. That is not a socially equitable society when you see ministers drive in four-wheel cars costing $90,000, not from their pockets, but from the taxpayers' money. That surely is not fair. That surely must change. So we got to, at the end of the day, the politicians have been elected not to serve their own interests. And there has to be an education of Ghanaians so that they are aware of their rights and their responsibilities and make demands of their politicians.
All right, Mr. Kufuor, so apart from corruption, selfishness, and nepotism that you've mentioned, what are the other kinds of mindset you think is preventing us, for example, in dealing with some of the issues? For example, today, yesterday we heard about that disaster which happened on Sunday of some students who lost their lives tragically at the Kintampo waterfalls. We know about our own documentary that we aired here on Joy News Channel, Next to Die, where about 4 babies are dying every day on the average at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital. What are some of the mindsets that we should develop? Because you're looking at the pulling down the negatives and building up the positives. So talking about changing minds, what are the kind of mindsets that we should develop that will help us deal with these problems? Well,
I mean, some of these problems are directly the responsibility of the authorities. For instance, the Kintampo waterfalls. Do they regularly check to see whether this is safe? I mean, is there any safety measures in place to make sure that these disasters never occur? Or is just you know, is in the lap of the gods. The maternal deaths, from what I understand, the Okonfo-Anokye Hospital should have been 40 years ago built. And the amount...
The mother and baby unit, yes.
Mother and baby unit. Now, surely, it is criminal, in my view, for the politicians to be negligent to this scale, where citizens of Ghana, parents of Ghana, young people of the future are just left to die. Now, an example, it may not necessarily be an example of you know, the authorities. For instance, you have doctors who demand payment before treating a patient. Surely, did they take the Hippocratic oath when they became doctors? I mean, there has to be, for instance, a medical council which can bring sanctions and discipline.
Well, there is a medical council.
Well, but what's the muscle they have? What kind of muscle do they have to bring errant practitioners to book?
So, Mr. Kufuor, in other words, so for the mindset of corruption, what should be the replacement? Well,
the mindset of corruption, as I understand it, there was a declaration of assets in the past. Now, my understanding is that the declaration of assets, once you've declared your assets, it's kind of put on a shelf somewhere. So if I'm a politician and I come and I have one house, I must be monitored in terms of the acquisitions that I have. If at the end of my term, I have 4 houses, then surely those houses will have to have a serious investigation as to how I came by those houses. And if they were acquired illegally and unlawfully, then I think I should be dispossessed. I don't think there's enough sanctions against bad practice. And that's why it continues. Corrupt people are corrupt because they are not criminalized for their corruption. They don't face any penalties. They collude with the legal system. Somebody does wrong. The judiciary also needs to be brought into look and so on. So it's systemic and it's fundamental. But we can change it. It can be changed when we all adopt a positive mindset and say, look, the national interest should be paramount, not the self-interest. Yeah.
So what is the vision of Changing Minds Ghana?
The vision of Changing Minds is that we want to create a mass movement, a movement of patriotic Ghanaians, a movement of Ghanaians who are conscientized to the fact that if my environment is dirty, then my health will be affected. So that each individual, you see, I feel that sometimes there's too much a dependency culture. It's the government that must do everything.
And that's one of the negative attitudes?
It is a negative attitude. You know, for instance, I went to a place today and the lady who was supposed to be at work wasn't. And I queried and I said, why is this lady not at her desk? The individual standing there said to me, because it has rained. I was horrified. Rained? You don't have umbrellas? You don't have raincoats?
Probably her roads are too bad.
No.
She cannot. It happens in this country.
It does.
There are some roads that are not motorable after heavy rains.
She lives in Accra. Now,
yes, and there are places in Accra like that.
Well, then let's fix the roads. Right. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example. As well, last year we went to a wedding. We were coming back. It was raining. We wanted to buy some petrol. We drive into a garage station or petrol station, and then the attendants are in the office. The driver goes there, why are you in the office? It's raining because if we start pumping, it's going to catch fire because the previous year. I mean, it's almost incredible that people will have such an attitude.
All right. We've run out of time, so I will just pick your thoughts on this issue about the Kintampo Falls accident. We are hearing apparently that the facility was taken over by Invincible Forces. And do you know about the Invincible Forces?
Well, of course, I'm a Ghanaian.
All right, okay. Well, that's good. You follow the conversation. So they've taken over the facility, apparently, and a lot of people have raised questions about the fact that they may not have been skilled or trained enough to have alerted you know, these young people of any potential danger. Talking about changing mindsets, we've seen this happen every time there's a change in government. I mean, from the NDC to the MPP retaliation, some will say, okay, you did it to us in 2008. We've waited for a time. It's now time to do this. Just your brief thoughts and comments on this particular attitude and mindset.
So you're talking about the belief in the spiritual force? Not
the spiritual force. The invisible forces are a group of young men who belong to the New Patriotic Party. And so they took over the facility when the NPP won the presidential election. And so the argument has been that, well, they may not have had the requisite skill to be able to, you know, prompt or even know the forest so well, or the forest so well, to be able to alert people of danger here, there. And I'm saying that we've seen this over and over again. When there's a change in government, supporters of the new government take over. We've seen that happening at toll booths. We've seen that happen at public toilets and all that. So just your brief comments on this attitude and how to change it.
The brief comment is anarchy. And it should be kind of quickly dealt with. You cannot have people basically subverting authority, and that's criminal. So you see, the problem we have is that we allow partisanship to have the order of day. This person belongs to my party, and therefore they can subvert the law. Surely, I mean, your party, with due respect to President Akufo-Addo, his party got 53.4 something percent. The rest, they can, you know, his supporters cannot say, well, we are in control of Ghana. No, you're not. You were voted, you had 53% point something percent. The other 40 something percent are as Ghanaian as you. And if we think Ghana, and the problem is we think party, and we've got to stop thinking party.
So how do we break the cycle? If this goes on, you know, every time
it goes on.
But so how do we break the cycle?
The cycle has to be broken by the party hierarchy. They have to take control and say, if I'm elected, for goodness sake, I'm a president of Ghana. I'm not a president of MPP. I'm not a president of NDC. And that is the most terrible mindset to say. Now, for instance, people say, well, it's our time now. Whose time? It's a time for Ghana. It's not a time for MPP. It's not a time for NDC. So that's the problem. The rulers themselves, we need to sit them down somewhere and engage with them. The political elites, we have to engage with them.
All right, Mr. Kufuor, so, I mean, if someone is watching us and wants to be part of your movement that is Changing Minds Ghana, how do they do that?
Well, our website soon, I hope it's on the site. We of course, are recruiting quite a large army of people because we feel that people who come to us will have a like mind to make a positive impact. And I've encountered and engaged with quite a large number of people.
So how do they get in touch and how do they join the movement?
Well, basically, the journey of the movement will be via our website, which I think now may be probably up and running.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Alexander Kwesi Kufuor is Chief Executive of Changing Minds Ghana, and he is of the strong view that the lot of issues that we face in this country can be dealt with if we have a change of mindset and attitude. Now, away from change of mindset and attitude, Member of Parliament for Bantama in Kumasi, Daniel Ochimma Boaji, says he will lead a fundraising effort to raise support in easing congestion at the Komfo maternity ward. He tells Love News he will make a statement on the floor of Parliament on the need to gather support towards completing the 40-year-old maternity block, the solution to the problem of space at the hospital. This follows John News' documentary on the plight of mothers at the facility. Now, the documentary revealed at least 4 babies die daily there, though the area falls outside the Bantama constituency. Daniel Ochimma Boaji notes his constituents are direct beneficiaries of the Komfo Teaching Hospital. He spoke to Love News after a visit to the Komfo Teaching Hospital yesterday. Nanaya Ochima reports.
About $70 million will be needed to complete the stored 100-bed facility, which commenced 43 years ago. Management is proposing an expansion of the current maternity block as a temporary solution to the challenge. According to management of CAT, some individuals and organizations have expressed interest in donating towards the expansion. The Bantama MP, Daniel Ochem Abuaji, believes more support is needed to bring an end to needless deaths. He tells Love News he has planned to deliver a statement on the floor of Parliament on the cat issue.
I'm appealing to the government and the Minister of Health to pay some attention to this hospital that takes care of so many of us. And so that's why I came. And obviously, I believe that temporary measure is something we must all, support. Yes, obviously, that's very true. Konfo-Anokye Hospital actually sits at the border of Bantama constituency. But as you all know, Bantama constituents are the biggest beneficiary of whatever they have to produce, if you're talking about proximity. And so because of that, whatever concerns Konfo-Anokye Hospital concerns us. So what I can say is that I'm going to work with the Honorable Minister, my own friend, and Eugene, Honorable Eugene Entry, for us to put our heads together and begin to talk to those who matter, those who can help us. We'll go and see the KMA Chief Executive, the new one, Honorable CCB Entry. Congratulations to him, and of course, our big brother, the Regional Minister, to see that this is a big problem. I understand that he's promised that he's going to help to see to this, that this big facility is completed. But in the interim, like I said, we need to pay attention to the small space that they have, which can take care of the many challenges they are having around, at least reduce it, so until this big one is probably completed in the medium to long term.
The congestion at CATH has also affected training of medical students at the teaching hospital. Professor Bafo Opoku is head of obstetrics and gynecology department at CATH.
Old hospital. It's the same hospital I used when I was a medical student. In my class, we were just 40. We used the same size of ward and the same size of consulting rooms for my training. Now we have an average of 200, 250 medical students every year. And when they come around, you see a lot of congestion. When I'm doing ward rounds, I have about 20 medical students following me, aside the doctors who are furthering the education. We call them the postgraduate doctors. Aside midwives, midwifery students, nursing students. So you realize that the whole place is congested. When they come to the consult room, there's no place for them to even sit, and they stand, and we have to distribute them over so many consulting rooms, and it's affecting their training. And you and I know, if you don't train a doctor very well, who knows, tomorrow you'll be the...
Nanaya Ojima reporting.
And
you're watching Joy News Desk with me, Benis Abubeidu. It's now time for business here, and Emmanuel Abuaji Riafi will be telling you why this could be a good time to do away with dollars if you do not really need them.